Chapter 39-49. She hadn't seen the man for a day. Then she smelled the familiar male pheromones from the man. Yiqing Luo suddenly flew up as her arms circled around the man's neck. Xian. Did you miss me? Dmo Xian's eyelids drooped slightly as his narrow peach blossom eyes seemed to ripple like a pool of spring water. Yiqing Luo's smile was like a flower as she didn't conceal it at all. Yes. The straightforward and decisive answer caused a smile to appear on the man's handsome face. He glanced at Tang Beiyuan from the corner of his eyes. It was just a glance, and Tang Beiyuan had already stood up as she silently left the room. She heard a slight sound from the room door. Yiqing Luo immediately turned her head and was about to call Tang Beiyuan. Her chin was locked by the man's slender fingers as he forcefully twisted her head in front of him as their eyes met. Her pupils were filled with the man's face. I still have something to say to Beiyuan. Why did you let her go? Even Yiqing Luo herself didn't notice that the way she was nestled in the man's arms was delicate and alluring. Even her voice and tone were unknowingly tainted with a coquettish tone. This was only in front of Dmo Xian when her body and mind were completely relaxed. Dmo Xian carried her up by the waist as he sat by the side of the bed and placed the young lady on his lap. His arms were tightly wrapped around the young lady's petite body. The young lady's entire body was wrapped tightly in his arms. Since you miss me, don't you have anything to say to me? His deep voice was clear and melodious. Yiqing Luo leaned her head on his chest. First come, first served. Following that, she raised her head and stared at the man's chin. Didn't you say that you specially asked Beiyuan to bring her fiancé here to nurture their relationship? Why can't I see a smile on Beiyuan's face? Don't ask about this in front of Beiyuan. Dmo Xian's fingers caressed her soft lips. To her, this should be very cruel. No wonder when she wanted to ask Beiyuan if something had happened between her and her fiancé, Dmo Xian appeared at the right time. She bit Dmo Xian's finger as she asked vaguely, then, what's going on between them? Do you expect a blockhead to understand? Dmo Xian allowed her to bite, his eyes burning as he stared at her mouth. Do you think everyone is as lucky as you, to be able to meet such a good husband like me? Yiqing Luo abruptly increased the strength of her teeth and released him, shameless. After being stared at by the man's burning gaze, her body seemed to be burning with fire. This man, why did he always stare at her like he wanted to devour her? All right, Beiyuan's matter, leave it to them to settle themselves. What we need to do now is to have a good talk. Dmo Xian's voice suddenly deepened, revealing a faint magnetism. What do you mean by, even if he wants to mess around? Shouldn't you explain this sentence properly? As he spoke, his voice became deeper and deeper. Yiqing Luo only felt that the world was spinning. His back was already leaning against the bed. The man's scorching hot body pressed down on her. Yiqing Luo grabbed his collar tightly as her eyes widened. You heard wrongly, I didn't say this sentence. Really? Dmo Xian's smile was like the blossoming of spring flowers, as his long and narrow peach blossom eyes revealed a wavy arc. Like a blooming datura. Giving off an alluring yet suffocating dangerous charm. Chapter 39-50. In your heart, am I someone who would mess around? Yiqing Luo wanted to avoid this question, but Dmo Xian was overbearing. His warm breath even came directly to his face. Yiqing Luo's little body shrunk as she tried to move away from Dmo Xian's confinement. The man's arm moved and locked onto her waist. Lil Luo, if you don't answer this question properly, you will be punished. Dmo Xian gave an evil smile as his eyes were filled with evil. That evil made Yiqing Luo feel her whole body turning soft. Especially her waist. Wasn't he already fed? Why was he still like this? As though he had been hungry for a long time. Dmo Xian suddenly locked her hand and pressed it on the bed. He bent over and his thin lips were already on her lips. Since you don't answer, then let's start my punishment directly. Yiqing Luo. You didn't even give me a chance to answer. Normal people would never be able to understand the thoughts of a beast. Yiqing Luo fainted from the torment. She didn't know if she fainted for a while or for a long time. Yiqing Luo felt her sore body turning numb. Following that, she felt warmth spreading throughout her body. She sighed comfortably as she lazily lifted her eyelids. She then discovered that she was leaning against a bathtub. The warm water covered her neck. The temperature was just right. There was a fragrance that seemed to be able to cleanse the body and mind. The fragrance entered her nose and her soul was purified. She closed her eyes comfortably as she felt drowsy. Suddenly, a hand covered her skin. The gentle touch washed the sweat on her body. Ah, Xian. She yawned as she lazily lifted her eyelids and glanced at Dmo Xian who was behind her. Following that, her body moved and her head with water droplets came closer to the man's arms. It also soaked the man's clothes. Yiqing Luo smiled delightfully. Dmo Xian looked at the young lady's tired face with that smile. He lovingly pinched her mischievous little face. He totally didn't care that his clothes were already soaked as he continued to gently wash the young lady's body. Yiqing Luo closed her eyes and leaned into the man's arms, enjoying his service. I haven't seen you for a day, what on earth did you and little Qingwu do? Yiqing Luo's voice sounded lazy, with a tinge of a young lady's softness. Dmo Xian chuckled softly, his melodious voice, in the midst of the mist, was a little more seductive. Why? Didn't you say that you absolutely trust her? I'm just curious and worried. Yiqing Luo rolled her eyes at him and purposely splashed some water on the man's face. He ran out without saying a word and didn't report back for a day and a night. Even if she knew that Dmo Xian would be fine. But he would also worry. Dmo Xian couldn't help but laugh at the young girl's childish actions. He lowered his voice and said with a chuckle, since it's already wet, I don't mind if it gets a little wetter. As the man's voice fell, her delicate body suddenly felt light. Then, water splashed in the bathtub. The man's tall body fell into the bathtub. Yiqing Luo cried out softly as she hooked her arms around the man's neck. The man was only wearing a thin inner garment. He took a soak in the water. And was dilly-dallied by the young lady again. It was already opened, revealing a large piece of skin. Their bodies were pressed together. Dmo Xian hugged the young lady tightly and whispered into her ear, It's my fault, there won't be a next time. Chapter 39:51. I got a piece of news and specially asked Qingwu to check it out. Dmo Xian hugged her as he explained gently. Yiqing Luo was shocked by Dmo Xian's action as she sobered up. What news? Do you still remember the palace lord of the Palace of Seclusion on the surface? Dmo Xian said as he continued to stir the water gently. Yiqing Luo was stunned. You mean, that palace lord of the Palace of Seclusion on the surface has come to the Earth realm? Lil Luo, is so intelligent, what use do I have? Dmo Xian pretended to sigh helplessly as he pinched the young lady's tender cheeks. You're right, I indeed got the news that that person has come to the Earth realm. Towards that palace lord on the surface, Yiqing Luo had an indescribable feeling. That person was from the Palace of Seclusion on the surface. And apparently, he had a close relationship with the real mastermind of the Palace of Seclusion. But his attitude towards her was very strange. It wasn't like the Palace of Seclusion, who had deep enmity towards her. Instead, he seemed to be helping her several times. Towards that person's identity. Yiqing Luo was still very concerned about it. Her slender brows creased slightly. Then, has Lil Qingwu found out? Dmo Xian lowered his eyelids as he looked at the young lady who was obviously interested. He bent down and bit the tip of her nose. Lil Luo, is very interested in that person? Yiqing Luo was in pain as she struggled to push the man away. Water splashed up. She covered her nose as she stared at him in annoyance. I'm just curious who he is. Dmo Xian tightened his arms as he hugged her tightly. No need to care who he is, just remember that he is from the Palace of Seclusion, that's enough. Yiqing Luo. Meaning. Palace of Seclusion and her were enemies. So no matter who that palace lord on the surface was, anyway they were enemies? This man's flying vinegar was unparalleled. Yiqing Luo kept her emotions as she looked at Dmo Xian seriously. Alright, then I won't be curious anymore. But, that palace lord on the surface, has he really come to the Earth realm? Dmo Xian looked at the young lady's pretentious look as he laughed. His slender fingers cupped the young lady's face as he straightened her. Then, he adjusted her delicate body into a position and nestled her in his arms. He picked up a soft handkerchief and wiped the girl's delicate body. Then, he continued, he has indeed come, but, at the moment, we cannot be sure of his purpose. The Palace of Darkness has just done such a big thing in the land domain. Even the balance historian has been alerted. They shouldn't dare to come out and cause trouble for a while. Yiqing Luo shut her eyes as she enjoyed the man's gentle service while speaking lazily. That person came to the Earth domain to investigate the current situation in the Earth domain, or perhaps, he's targeting me? Worried? Dmo Xian chuckled as he leaned over and whispered into her ear. Yiqing Luo didn't even lift her eyelids. With you around, what am I worried about? The man's husky and magnetic laughter rang in her ears. Obviously, this sentence pleased him. To be honest, she was not worried at all. The current situation in the land. No matter what, the Palace of Gloomy Darkness didn't dare to act recklessly anymore. However, that damned Palace of Gloomy Darkness liked to hide in the dark and shoot arrows. This point was indeed too disturbing. The warm water on her body and the soft touch, mixed with the man's comfortable massage technique. Yiqing Luo was so comfortable that she almost fell asleep. However, this comfortable feeling gradually became a little off. Chapter 3952. Yiqing Luo. He had tormented her so much that she had fainted. Hadn't he been satiated yet? Yiqing Luo opened her eyes expressionlessly as she grabbed his hand. Did you think I had really fallen asleep? Do you think I look like such a beast? His lips curled as his hoarse laughter was deep and pleasant to the ears. Yiqing Luo increased the strength of her fingers as she pinched his hand and replied without hesitation, yes. Dmo Xian's laughter became even more alluring as he leaned close to her ear and breathed out warm air. Since Lil Luo has said so, your husband will naturally meet Lil Luo's expectations. That seductive voice was like a small hook that tugged at her heartstrings. The next moment, her petite body suddenly felt light. Water splashed. She was pulled by a force as her face faced towards Dmo Xian's direction, facing the man. Yiqing Luo panted lightly as her hands instinctively circled around the man's neck. Her petite body fell onto the man's chest. Damn, you beast. Yiqing Luo had yet to regain her senses when the man's action made her sink into oblivion. In front of her eyes, it was as if fireworks had bloomed, extremely splendid. After that, Yiqing Luo really fainted and only climbed up the next afternoon. She simply wanted to cry but had no tears. She should be proud. Where was her man's battle power? Or should she mourn for her future days? She would die in that beast's arms? Why is your face so ugly after you woke up? Just as she was cursing a certain beast in her heart, a beast's voice was heard by the side of her ear. Just hearing this voice, Yiqing Luo felt her waist and legs turning soft. Her line of sight moved. She saw that peerless man leaning over by the side of the bed. His hand moved. Her soft petite body fell into his arms. Yiqing Luo gave a humph as she shifted in his arms and found a comfortable position to nestle. Looking at your expression. Could it be that you're not satisfied with my performance last night? Dmo Xian's brows were filled with a smile. That smile was like the blooming of spring flowers, captivating one's soul. Yiqing Luo, on the other hand, quivered a little as her comfortable face trembled twice. Satisfied. Satisfied. I couldn't be more satisfied. She was afraid that the man would continue. Since my performance last night was not satisfactory, I will perform well tonight. If she really hears this, she reckons that you will die. But Yiqing Luo had apparently underestimated a certain beast's degree of beastliness. After the young girl finished her words, Yi Zichen's eyes widened. The smile in the man's eyes deepened. His handsome face, which was filled with seduction and cold lines, also became much gentler. He chuckled. He laughed so hard that Sue almost exploded. Then, his slender fingers clasped the girl's chin. A warm kiss landed on her lips. His kiss was infatuated. It made Yiqing Luo, whose waist and legs were originally sore, even softer and softer. Her eyes, which had just woken up, were about to tear up. Following that, the man's voice, which was so seductive that it broke the rules, rang out in a low voice as if he was possessed. Since Lil Luoer is so satisfied, then, tonight I will continue to work hard to make you even more satisfied. Yiqing Luo felt numb all over. She was so frightened by his words that the feeling of that kiss, which she couldn't bear at all, was completely swept away. Her little face turned pale from fright. As Dmo Xian kissed, he sensed that the young girl's mood wasn't right. When he lifted his head, he saw the young girl's pale face. Her watery eyes stared at him in astonishment. That look was indeed very cute. Chapter 3953. Looks like Lil Luoer was really frightened last night. Next time, he had to control himself. Frightened Lil Luoer. For a long time to come. Lil Luoer would probably not let him touch her. Dmo Xian's eyes were filled with smiles as he leaned over and kissed her lips. It made the young girl's pale face blush. Only then did he release the girl's lips and let her go. I promise, next time I will be gentler. His laughter was low and hoarse as he reached out to pull the robe by the side and helped Yiqing Luo change into it. Yiqing Luo's eyes widened as she lifted her leg to kick the man. Do you still want it next time? Don't even think about it. Her feet were covered by the man's broad palm. Then, he pulled with all his might. Her delicate body fell into the man's arms. The man skillfully and gently helped her get dressed. Then, he carried her off the bed. Next to him, toiletries were already prepared. Yiqing Luo didn't want to move as she completed a series of actions to wake up under Dmo Xian's care. She had deliberately splashed the water on the man several times. He didn't even look the slightest bit displeased. His actions were still as gentle as ever as he helped her wipe away the water. Working hard without complaint, not retaliating when hit, not rebutting when scolded, made Yiqing Luo feel much better. The expression on his face softened a little. In such a sweet atmosphere, the room was filled with pink bubbles. Yiqing Luo dressed neatly and walked out of the room. She rejected Dmo Xian's request to carry her all the way. When she woke up, it was already noon. If she allowed Dmo Xian to carry her out. Wasn't this clearly telling everyone, what did she and Dmo Xian do last night? Moreover, his entire body was sore and limp. If he didn't move, he would die. She would only feel worse. Yiqing Luo left the room and was pulled by Dmo Xian to the main hall. Piping hot dishes had already been prepared in the hall. Yiqing Luo rubbed her tummy as she snorted coldly at Dmo Xian. At least he knew his place. He knew that she was exhausted last night. Now she knew that he had taken good care of her every little bit. Men. Yiqing Luo was like a tsundere little princess as she took her seat. After a while, Lao Lai heard that she had woken up and rushed over. After seeing the table full of delicacies, he reached out and grabbed the table. As he grabbed, he said, Madam D, I've been waiting for you for so long, just now. Ah. Lord, what are you doing? Ah, his hand had yet to reach over. It was caught between two chopsticks. It was Di Zun. That cold gaze and the strength of the chopstick sent chills down old Lai's spine. He immediately retracted his hand and shrunk it into his chest. He was filled with grief and indignation. Di Zun, these were specially prepared for Di Furen. If you don't want me to touch them, just tell me. Why do you have to be so cruel? Dmo Xian did not even cast a glance at him. Throwing the wooden chopsticks aside, he picked up a new pair of chopsticks and started to serve Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo took a look at the aggrieved old Lai as she ate the food which Dmo Xian sent to her mouth and said, "What did you say earlier? Is there something urgent you need me for?" Holding his hand, Lao Lai looked at the noble and elegant Dizun, who was feeding the girl. Then, he looked at his swollen hand. They were all humans, but why was there such a huge difference between them? "Pei Sheng is looking for you. He said that today is the first auction of the treasure gathering and he hopes that you can be present," Lao Lai said in an aggrieved tone. Wearing that horrifying old face, he used such an aggrieved tone. Yiqing Luo felt her hair stand on end. She had just shivered. Chapter 39:54. Lao Lai immediately stood up straight, his hands hanging on both sides. Yiqing Luo patted Dmo Xian's hand and looked at old Lai. "Pei Sheng intends to hold an auction today?" Old Lai still stood straight. "Yes. This morning, Pei Sheng came to invite you, but Lord Dizun stopped him." Yiqing Luo nodded. "I'll head over after I finish eating." Old Lai took a look at Dmo Xian and his body flashed towards the door. "I've already conveyed the message. I'll go to the treasure gathering exchange first. All of you take your time to eat." His vigorous posture made it impossible to tell that he was an old man over 50 years old. "Eat slowly, there's no hurry." Dmo Xian sent the food to her mouth. "We'll go over later." Yiqing Luo looked at the table full of delicacies. She knew that these were meticulously prepared by Dmo Xian. If she did not savor it properly, she would be letting down Dmo Xian's heart. Over at treasure gathering, even though the auction started in the morning, it will also last until night. She was in no hurry. Therefore, it was already half an hour later before he could comfortably fill his stomach. Yiqing Luo had just stood up and was preparing to head over to the treasures exchange hall with Dmo Xian. Suddenly, a black figure appeared in front of them in a flash. It was a cold-looking man, about 25 or 26 years old. His face was solemn, and he looked very much like an old cadre. Just one look and Yiqing Luo was able to guess this person's identity. Tang Beiyuan's fiancé, Lang Lixian. Why is he here? When Dmo Xian saw Lang Lixian, a sliver of astonishment flashed past his eyes. Lang Lixian took a look at Yiqing Luo and walked quickly towards Dmo Xian as he whispered something into his ear. Dmo Xian's expression sunk slightly. From the corner of his eyes, he shot a glance at Yiqing Luo's direction. Yiqing Luo understood and smiled. "If you have something to do, go ahead first." After all, Dmo Xian was an emperor of the imperial palace and his status in the upper realm was not ordinary. Naturally, there were many miscellaneous matters that required his attention. Yiqing Luo wasn't a lady who pestered endlessly. When it was time to act coquettishly, she would do so. Be rational when you need to be rational. Dmo Xian pursed his lips slightly. "The auction. There's still old Lai and the rest at the auction, so I'll head over alone." Yiqing Luo replied. Dmo Xian stretched out his hand and hugged Yiqing Luo as he lowered his head and planted a kiss on her forehead. "I will be back as soon as possible, wait for me tonight." When Yiqing Luo opened her eyes, the man was nowhere to be seen. She looked at the horizon for a long time and sighed. The first auction of the treasure gathering hall was extremely lively. Qiao family had even specially rented a place for Pei Sheng to play around, because of the disruption of the previous auction. The commotion of the treasure gathering auction this time was not much different from the auction fair. The big shots of many forces came to keep watch. It was impossible to tell that before the auction, the treasures gathering trading house was a trading house that no one cared about and had almost closed down. Yiqing Luo didn't want to cause too much of a commotion, in case those big shots took turns to chat awkwardly. She specially adjusted her hairstyle and makeup, and also wore a veil to cover her face. Although his aura had weakened quite a bit, but it still couldn't hide her stunning beauty. Yiqing Luo had just walked out of the auction house and was about to enter. Suddenly a number of ladies bumped into her from behind. They were chattering as fragrant powder was scattered all over. Yi Qing Luo frowned slightly as she evaded the lady when she bumped into her. Chapter 39:55. The ladies fell onto the ground as they immediately cried out, "Ouch, ouch, ouch." All of them were like weak willows swaying in the wind, swaying their waists as they climbed up from the ground. Following that, they swarmed over to help up the disheveled lady who had fallen right at the bottom. After helping the man up, Zhang Wuji said. A lady who looked extremely pampered stared angrily at Yi Qing Luo. "Don't you have eyes? What did you bump into? Can you afford to offend our sacred lady?" Hearing a sharp voice, Yi Qing Luo couldn't help but frowned as she cast a sidelong glance over. She didn't want to create trouble at the first round of the auction, so she didn't bother about their baffling bumping over. This group of people actually had the cheek to criticize her. Heh! Sacred lady? Yi Qing Luo's first thought was Qiao families. Qiao Yulu, who had died in the auction. Qiao Yulu had just died not too long ago. Linglong Palace had already arranged for a new sacred lady to arrive at without embroiling city so quickly. The 6 ladies in front of her, all of their looks were considered top-notch and the dresses they were wearing were luxurious and dignified. She could tell that they were all young missies from extremely well-off families. When the ladies saw that Yi Qing Luo didn't have any reaction towards their reprimands and even sized them up, they were so infuriated that their faces turned red. "Slut! What are you looking at? Are we people that a lowly person like you can look at directly?" Another lady echoed, "That's right. Don't you know what status you have, to actually dare to stand at the entrance of the auction house? Who doesn't know that today is the first round of the auction house and various powerhouses will be there to support us?" A lady covered her mouth as she laughed sarcastically, a lady intentionally standing here in a flirtatious manner. What else could it be for? The few of them looked at Yi Qing Luo with eyes filled with ridicule. Yi Qing Luo glanced at them indifferently and retracted her gaze, not bothering to bother about this bunch of retards. She lifted her feet and walked towards the auction house. She had just turned around when the ladies behind her rushed up and blocked her path. "Slut! Offending our sacred lady and still trying to escape." The ladies' faces were filled with ridicule, with a playful smile. Apparently, they had treated Yi Qing Luo as a toy which could serve as a foil for their status. Enough. A sweet-sounding voice suppressed the mockery of the few people. Soon after, the woman surrounded by the 5 women, the Holy Virgin, slowly walked over. The woman was dressed in a white robe and had a white veil over her face. She looked like an ethereal fairy. Her attire was very similar to Qiao Yulu's. Did she think that, by imitating Qiao Yulu, she would be able to become Qiao Yulu? Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes slightly, as she calmly looked at the approaching figure of the woman. The veil hid the impatience on her lips. His half-squinted eyes gave off a sharp feeling. The sharpness of the blade made the woman feel an indescribable chill run through her entire body as she walked over. The lady's willowy brows creased as she suspiciously sized up Yi Qing Luo. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't associate that chill with the young girl in front of him. Saintus, this bitch is obviously a vixen. I think she must have heard that the overlord would come to the auction today, so she purposely waited here. Chapter 39:56. The arrogant lady's voice wasn't considered soft. Yi Qing Luo was closer, so she naturally heard what she said. When she heard the words, "overlord," her brows couldn't help but rose. Did they just say, "Ah Xian"? This lady who was addressed as Sacred Maiden was specially here to meet Ah Xian? It was just a slight change in expression. But it was seen clearly by those ladies. One of the ladies immediately pointed at her and shouted, "Look!" When she heard the overlord's name, her eyes lit up. She's indeed here to seduce the overlord. Slut! Who do you think you are? The overlord will only belong to our Sacred Maiden. The arrogant lady ridiculed and was delighted. This bunch of ladies, their mouths were really unforgiving. It was a barrage of words. There wasn't any intention to control their voices. It attracted the attention of the passers-by. This was the first auction of the treasure-gathering hall, and also the last auction of the treasure-gathering hall. Those who came and went were all people with extremely high statuses. It was extremely rare to hear such a scene of people scolding and pestering endlessly on the streets. Originally they didn't want to bother about it. However, when he heard those women calling him His Majesty and Saintess again and again, he couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. This made quite a number of people stop in their tracks as they crowded around. Some powerhouses' big shots recognized those few ladies. Those ladies were all from the Earth realm and were the daughters of the top-ranked large clans. Among the large clans, their reputation was extremely good. To be able to make these noble young ladies flock to her, what kind of status did she have? Everyone sized up these few ladies as their eyes were filled with probing. But no one interfered in this matter. Seeing the surrounding big shots crowding around, those ladies didn't feel embarrassed at all. Instead, they felt even more interested. Especially that arrogant lady, her chest puffed out even more and her waist straightened even more. The Overlord is still waiting for our sacred maiden to meet up. He doesn't have the leisure to waste time with you here. Saying that, she arrogantly commanded, "Slut, earlier you've offended the sacred maiden. Kneel down and apologize to us and we'll forgive your offense." Yiqing Luo, where did this severely retarded patient come from? Hurry and drag her back. Such a stupid and retarded way. Didn't she feel ashamed? Could it be that he didn't notice? The way the big bosses looked at them was definitely not supportive of their actions, right? Was he retarded or blind? In the face of this kind of trouble with a weak battle, Yiqing Luo didn't even want to bother about him. However, what made her slightly curious was whether the Overlord they were talking about was the same person as her Xian. "Slut, are you scared, silly?" The arrogant woman shouted for some time but didn't see any response from Yiqing Luo, so she raised her hand and pushed Yiqing Luo. Just as he moved, his wrist was locked by Yiqing Luo. Crack! The bones in the woman's wrist were broken. The arrogant woman let out a blood-curdling scream and withdrew her hand. "You! How dare you!" Yiqing Luo's action made those complacent ladies' atmosphere congeal as pairs of penetrating eyes stared over. Yiqing Luo took out her handkerchief and wiped her hand which she had touched earlier. Every strand of hair was carefully wiped. It was as if he had touched the plague. Then, he threw the handkerchief on the ground. Following that, he raised his head slightly and looked at the few people in front of him. Yiqing Luo's brows were suffused with a faint smile. That smile was very cold. There was a kind of sharp feeling. Chapter 3957. "Oh. You want me to apologize?" Yiqing Luo tilted her head as her voice was clear. Even though she was wearing a veil, her side profile was still breathtakingly beautiful. Yiqing Luo's actions, coupled with her obvious provocative reply, made the lady's expressions sunk one by one. The lady squinted her eyes. "Do you know who we are? How dare you make a move in front of Sacred Maiden? Do you believe that as long as our Sacred Maiden opens her mouth to the Overlord will make your life worse than death?" After saying this, the lady even held onto Sacred Maiden's arm tightly in protest. Sacred Maiden's beautiful eyes squinted slightly as her gaze turned icy cold. Apparently, she was extremely dissatisfied with Yiqing Luo's action of making her lose face in front of everyone. But Yiqing Luo's expression didn't even change. Her eyes were curved, still that mischievous arc. "Oh? Overlord?" Yiqing Luo's voice was light and carried a sliver of suspicion. "The Overlord you mentioned, is it the Overlord that I know of?" The lady's expressions turned extremely ugly. "Are you trying to say that we intentionally used the Overlord to cheat you? Heh, who do you think you are? Are you worthy for us to cheat you? There is only one Overlord in this world. The Overlord we are talking about is naturally the most mysterious Overlord in the upper realm, Dmo Xian. Do you know what relationship our Sacred Maiden has with the Overlord? If we say it out, you'll be scared to death." The ladies were all talking at once as they sneered. Each and every one of them were arrogant, as though they could use the prestige of Overlord to do whatever they wanted. Whereas that Sacred Maiden who was being complimented by everyone, had not stopped them from the start, nor did she open her mouth to explain. She had a tacit attitude. This made the various powerhouses' big shots unable to bear it when they heard this sentence. Overlord? Anne. This sacred maiden? Overlord and Imperial Madam's relationship is so good, how could there possibly be a third person? If she has no relationship with the Overlord, how would she dare to speak out the Overlord's name in front of everyone? You must know that the Overlord and Imperial Madam are still in the Earth realm. The boss of the treasure gathering hall is Imperial Madam's friend, so Imperial Madam and the Overlord will definitely come to the auction today. If Imperial Madam bumped into these few people, perhaps even the entire family would be implicated. The surrounding voices made the women's faces turn even uglier. However, he was surrounded by big shots. No matter how angry he was, no matter how much he wanted to refute, he still suppressed his emotions. Pfft, Yi-Ching Luo laughed out when she heard those people's discussions. Her smile caused the hateful gazes of the women to instantly fall on her. So that's how it is. I was wondering why you people are so bored. Every time you catch a person, you think he's here for Lord Dizun. Yi-Ching Luo smiled lightly, the corners of her eyes curved, narrow and mischievous. So, it's you guys. Who are feeling guilty? Who's guilty? The arrogant woman's face turned pale. She held her broken hand and stared at her fiercely. Our Holy Virgin is here to meet His Majesty. Yi-Ching Luo smiled without saying a word. In the eyes of the women, that smile was a mockery and provocation. They were so angry that their eyes turned red. At this moment, suddenly, the crowd was filled with lively chatter. Boss Pei, why are you here personally? Boss Pei, long time no see. Congratulations. Chapter 3958. As the greetings rang, everyone's gaze immediately shifted from the ladies towards Pei Sheng, who had just walked out of the auction house. Pei Sheng was dressed in a dignified and luxurious ink-black brocade robe today, his hair combed neatly. He looked exactly like a rich young master. His every movement exuded an extraordinary aura and a graceful demeanor. In Yi-Ching Luo's eyes, it was as though the son whom she had raised had finally grown up. Pei Sheng didn't show any signs of stage fright in front of a group of big shots. With a slight smile, he nodded towards the crowd to express his greeting. That is, the boss of the Treasures Exchange Hall? He looks so handsome. I didn't expect Boss Pei to be so young. He's walking towards us. Those few ladies looked towards Pei Sheng's direction as their eyes were almost glued onto Pei Sheng. The arrogant lady endured the pain as she leaned her body towards the sacred maiden, and after that, she shot a vicious and complacent look at Yi-Ching Luo. Did you see that? Boss Pei has personally come out to welcome our sacred maiden. You're dead meat. Pei Sheng was indeed walking towards them. His target was very decisive. He crossed the crowd and walked over. The few ladies were so agitated that their faces flushed red. Even the aloof and respectable sacred maiden in the middle had a faint complacent look in her eyes. Did Boss Pei hear about the small fight outside the auction house and specially came over to mediate? He's indeed Boss Pei. He's personally here for such a small matter. He's really responsible. If what that sacred maiden said is true, then that young lady is probably in trouble. Who knows, Boss Pei and Imperial Madam are close friends, and if Sacred Maiden's words were to reach Imperial Madam's ears, Imperial Madam would not let this matter rest. The surrounding big shots were discussing as they watched the show. Pei Sheng walked to the front of the ladies. He paused as he took a look at those few coquettish ladies. After that, he was about to walk past them. Suddenly, a figure blocked in front of him. Boss Pei, I'm so sorry to make you come out personally to fetch me. Pei Sheng was blocked. In front of him was a lady dressed in white with a veil. Who was this lady? You don't even know her, why did you fetch her? Even though he was complaining in his heart, he still had to maintain a decent smile on his face. This young lady, I know, His Majesty asked you to come and pick me up, right? The Saintess maintained her elegant smile and raised her head slightly, looking very arrogant. Dizun. Pei Xing subconsciously looked towards Yiqing Luo. What and what? If the venerable sovereign were to pick someone up, it would be Ah Luo. What does it have to do with this strange woman? Pei Xing only heard from old Lai that he sensed Yiqing Luo's presence and specially came to the entrance to receive her. He hadn't even reached Yiqing Luo. However, he was stopped by these strange little girls. Whereas Yiqing Luo stood by the side with her arms crossed, enjoying the show. He had not figured out the situation yet. Suddenly, a figure flew towards him. Pei Xing was so frightened that he quickly moved to the side. He saw a woman, who had thrown herself at him a little too fiercely. She was unable to stand firmly for a moment and staggered a few times. Fortunately, the woman beside him pulled him back in time. The woman's face was spoiled and her eyes were red as she clutched her wrist and whimpered, "Boss Pei, you have to stand up for us. Look at that slut, she dealt me a vicious hand at your auction's entrance. Look at my hand. It's broken." Chapter 39-59. Pei Xing looked towards the direction which the lady was pointing at. Following that, he met with the young lady's smiling eyes. By his ear, the lady was still crying as she continued, "You don't know, that slut has no right to enter Boss Pei's auction house. She has ulterior motives towards the overlord, intentionally acting coquettishly, trying to seduce the overlord." The arrogant lady pushed the sacred maiden forward again. "This is Shadowless City's sacred maiden, Mu Chilon. The reason why sacred maiden is here is firstly to take part in Boss Pei's auction, and secondly is to attend the overlord's appointment." When she mentioned the two words, attend, the arrogant lady intentionally emphasized on her tone. She even looked at Yiqing Luo complacently. "Our sacred maiden is not like some people, racking her brains to cling onto a man and sell herself." Shadowless City's sacred maiden? Pei Xing's brows creased slightly. With Qiao Yulu in front of him. Towards the sacred maiden, two words. Pei Xing felt some disgust in his heart. But she was after all another main city's sacred maiden. He still had to give her some face on the surface. He gave a distant yet polite smile. "So it's Shadowless City's sacred maiden. Please forgive me for not going out to welcome you." This was originally just a polite sentence. When that arrogant lady heard that, she took it seriously as the complacent expression on her face became even more obvious. "Sacred maiden is kind-hearted and will not see you over such a small matter." Following that, she raised her arm and pointed towards Yiqing Luo as her voice was mixed with viciousness and gnashing her teeth. "But I still need to trouble Boss Pei to deal with this slut who harbors ill intentions towards the overlord and even offended sacred maiden." As she said that, she stared malevolently at Yiqing Luo with a complacent look. "Otherwise, if our sacred maiden were to fly into a rage, I believe the consequences. Boss Pei is very clear about it." Pei Xing. He wasn't clear, totally not clear. But he was very clear that if Yiqing Luo were to fly into a rage, the consequences would be extremely horrifying. After she finished acting cool, the arrogant lady looked at Pei Xing with a complacent look. But she discovered that Pei Xing's expression was complicated, totally without any intention to go along with her. The arrogant lady's face sunk as she stomped her feet angrily. "Boss Pei, our sacred maiden is invited by the overlord. You don't wish for this matter to reach the overlord's ears, right?" The big shots watching couldn't help but laugh. "She's the young mistress of a prominent clan in Shadowless City, right? If I'm not mistaken, I met her at the banquet in Shadowless City. What kind of family could raise such a moron? Who doesn't know that the Overlord and Lady D are very close? Who doesn't know that Boss Pei is Lady D's friend? That's right. You're using the arch to pressure Boss Pei in front of him. You must be out of your mind, right?" One by one, the big shots began to dig up the identities of these young ladies. Even their families were ridiculed. The haughty woman and the others naturally heard the mockery. She even heard them start to mock her family. All of them were so angry that their faces turned red. He dared to be angry, but he didn't dare to say anything. Pei Xing looked sympathetically at the woman who was still whimpering. He agreed with the big shots very much. This group of women really thought highly of themselves. In front of the main character, she kept referring to him as Di Zun, in such an ambiguous manner. Don't think that His Majesty is the king of jealousy. The moment Yi Qing Luo's vinegar jar was overturned. Chapter 3960. As expected. When Pei Sheng was looking at Yi Qing Luo, he saw Yi Qing Luo's eyes curling upwards, coquettish, devilish, like a blooming poppy. But he could clearly see it. Under the blossoming flames, the hidden sharpness. But these women in front of him apparently didn't know about it. They even attributed the reason why they were in such a predicament to Yi Qing Luo. Pei Sheng coughed lightly. I'm sorry, I'm afraid I'm unable to do anything about your request. As he was saying that, he walked past the few women and walked towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. You, what do you mean? The arrogant woman retorted angrily, what do you mean by unable to do anything? A lady by the side pulled the arrogant woman's arm. I heard that Boss Pei seems to have a fiancé, could it be, it's... Before the word, her, could be said, Pei Sheng's eyes widened as he interrupted sharply, don't talk nonsense. I still want to live on. Earlier when old Master Huangfu forcefully put him and Yi Qing Luo against each other, it had already caused the overlord to be unhappy with him. Pei Sheng didn't dare to hear such words again. Boss Pei. Mu Qilan raised her head as her beautiful eyes met Pei Sheng's gaze. Her voice was calm with a tinge of elegance, but the words that came out from her mouth were filled with ridicule. A lady who uses her looks to serve others can also make Boss Pei helpless. This makes this saintess doubt Boss Pei's ability. She paused slightly and laughed. Her gaze seemed to look towards the direction of the auction venue. Apparently, she was doubting if this auction had any meaning at all. Pei Sheng's eyes turned slightly cold as his gaze sunk. But the smile on his lips was even more gentle and polite. He looked at Mu Qilan as he gave a distant smile. Saintess is right to lecture me. But, this lady, even the overlord doesn't dare to touch her, not to mention me. When he said that, instantly, the surrounding big shots were in an uproar. Even the overlord didn't dare to touch her? How was that possible? Was there anyone in this world whom the overlord didn't dare to touch? Mu Qilan didn't expect Pei Sheng to reply in this way. When she heard this, her beautiful eyes trembled as she looked in disbelief at that calm and indifferent young lady who was standing there lazily. A thought arose in her mind. The more he thought about it, the more flustered he became. At this moment, a figure squeezed out of the crowd. When the big shots saw that person, they immediately made way for him. Soon after, another figure walked out of the auction hall. It's Patriarch Xiao. There's also the seniors from Hell Palace. Why are they here? It seems like this farce has already spread to the venue. This is going to be interesting. The appearance of Patriarch Xiao and Old Lai caused a huge uproar. The women looked at the two people walking towards them. Then, he turned to look at Mu Qilan and said, Saintess, Clan Head Xiao and the seniors from the Underworld Palace are here. They will definitely give us, before the words, justice, could even come out of his mouth. Patriarch Xiao and Old Lai directly walked past them, stopping right in front of Yi Qing Luo and Pei Sheng. Brat, I asked you to pick someone up, why are you taking so long? Don't you know it's very busy inside? Lao Lai patted Pei Sheng's shoulder. Patriarch Xiao looked at Yi Qing Luo. Imperial Madam, you've reached the venue, why don't you go in directly? Chapter 3961. The spectating bigwigs. Had they heard wrongly? Why did they seem to have heard Imperial Madam's name? What did it mean by covering half of her face and they couldn't recognize her? They really didn't recognize her all right? The bigwigs were extremely shocked. The group of people were filled with disbelief as they stood dazed on the spot. Imperial Madam? Patriarch Xiao and Hell Palace's senior called that lady Imperial Madam? In their minds, they suddenly recalled Pei Sheng's words with a smile yet not a smile. This lady, even the overlord doesn't dare to touch her, not to mention me. Even the overlord didn't dare to touch her. Imperial Madam. Yi Qing Luo. Apparently, the the surrounding bigwigs also thought of this sentence. Instantly, all of them burst out laughing. Originally they were a bunch of onlookers. But now all of them started to crowd around. Ha ha ha. Boss Pei is right about one thing. In this world, the only lady whom the Overlord doesn't dare to touch is Imperial Madam. I was still wondering what kind of lady was she, to be so calm. I'd not expected her to be Imperial Madam. Imperial Madam. Imperial Madam. Numerous bigwigs swarmed forward to greet her. In an instant, he pushed away the few women who were standing rooted to the ground in a daze, their faces filled with astonishment. Madam Sacred, she's actually the Yi Qing Luo? The lady looked at Mu Qilan as her teeth were chattering. What should we do? Imperial Madam, ah. The person we offended is Imperial Madam. We will definitely die a horrible death. Madam Sacred, you must save us. When the ladies regained their senses, their legs started to wobble. One by one, they hugged Mu Qilan's arm as they complained. They had never expected that this young lady who was standing outside the auction house, hiding her head and peeping, was the rumored Yi Qing Luo. Because Yi Qing Luo's reputation had long resounded throughout the entire territory. If Yi Qing Luo appeared, the surrounding bigwigs would all rush forward to strike up a conversation. But things happened just like that. The young lady whom they were berating was Imperial Madam Yi Qing Luo. Just thinking of their attitude and what they said earlier, the lady's legs turned so wobbly that they almost knelt onto the ground. Mu Qilan's head was throbbing from their crying. The expression on his face seemed to be covered with frost. She really didn't want to care about the lives of these idiots. However, the matter just now was so big. These women were her subordinates. If he really made them kneel on the ground and beg for mercy, she would only embarrass the saintess of Shadowless City. Mu Qilan's face darkened. Under her sleeves, her fingers were so tight that red marks were almost forming on her flesh. She took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in her chest. Shut up. The women stopped crying, and then started sobbing, not daring to make a sound. Mu Qilan was deliberating on how to alleviate the current predicament. No matter what, she couldn't lose face as the saintess. However, the large group of people in front of them directly ignored their existence and walked towards the auction venue. And in the middle of these big shots, was Yi Qing Luo. Mu Qilan's eyes darkened as she coughed lightly and called out, Madam. His words immediately drew everyone's attention to him. Chapter 3962. Mu Qilan walked over slowly as she slightly raised her head and met Yi Qing Luo's gaze. The red lips under the veil curled up beautifully. Her voice was gentle and beautiful. I apologize to you on behalf of my friends. After all, in their hearts, the Overlord was a godlike existence. They had been guessing who was the lady who could tie the knot with the Overlord. I didn't expect it to be you, after all. She paused and gave a low laugh. It's our bad eyesight to not recognize the Overlord. Saying that, Mu Qilan looked at Yi Qing Luo and nodded her head slightly, expressing her apology. But her attitude was extremely lofty. No one could tell that this was an apologetic attitude. Moreover, everyone could tell that although Mu Qilan was apologizing, but in her words, it was all ridiculing Yi Qing Luo. Born from a prestigious family? Wasn't this ridiculing Yi Qing Luo's low status? Dmo Xian was a godlike existence and she, Yi Qing Luo? The last two words, bad eyesight, were just short of saying, you're not worthy of the Overlord at all. The big shots frowned as they were annoyed by this arrogant young lady who didn't know when to stop. Just as they were about to stand up for the Overlord to gain some attention. But they heard a young lady's sweet laughter. Shadowless City's sacred lady is rather self-aware. Since you know that your eyesight is bad, then don't lead your own dog and go around biting people. When everyone heard this voice, they suppressed the thought of standing up for her. Who are you calling a dog? The arrogant lady's face turned black as she was about to fly into a rage. But she was stopped by Mu Qilan. Yi Qing Luo's charming eyes rose into an arc as she gave an evil look. I heard that Shadowless City's sacred lady is here specially to attend my Xian's appointment, is that right? Her voice was slightly flirtatious. Every word seemed to drag out the ending syllable. Mu Qilan also discovered it. When the young lady in front of her smiled, the noble and elegant aura which belonged to a young lady was dispersed. Mu Qilan's face turned slightly pale, but she tried her best to control the trembling in her voice. Right. After she said this word, she took a deep breath and calmed herself down a little. An undetectable hint of jealousy flashed across his eyes. The Overlord and Madame Di Zun are very close. I don't think he will stop me from meeting the Overlord, right? She purposely mentioned this sentence. It was obviously intentional. Not only did she display her demeanor in front of everyone, but she also showed that she had a clear conscience. It could also agitate Yi Qing Luo, making her unable to stop her from making an appointment with the Overlord. After all, they were in front of so many big shots. If Yi Qing Luo were to stop her, wouldn't she appear to be extremely narrow-minded? Mu Qilan was even worse, hoping that Yi Qing Luo would turn ugly because of jealousy. If Yi Qing Luo were to kick up a fuss because of this, the Overlord would definitely hate her. The entire Earth domain would know that she, Yi Qing Luo, was a petty and jealous woman. However, Mu Qilan apparently didn't understand Yi Qing Luo, and treating Yi Qing Luo as an ordinary lady was a huge mistake. As expected, after hearing Mu Qilan's words, Yi Qing Luo started laughing. Her eyes were curved and her smile was very deep. But the crowd couldn't feel that smile at all. They only felt a sudden powerful aura enveloping the surroundings. It made everyone's back unknowingly turned cold. For a moment, the bustling auction house's entrance fell into silence. Chapter 3963. Her magnanimity instead made everyone feel comfortable. It totally didn't make anyone feel disgusted. Mu Qilan's expression sunk instantly as her eyes were filled with astonishment. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled up as her smile grew wider with a hint of ridicule. A noble and elegant mysterious maiden like you shouldn't do. Knowing that I can't allow a Xian to meet other ladies, you still want to meet a Xian, this kind of thing that would make the world laugh at you, right? Mu Qilan's expression changed drastically as it turned green and white. She had not expected this. She would be counterattacked by Yi Qing Luo. If she really met the Di Zun now, it would be too late. Perhaps the entire Earth domain would start spreading that she, Shadowless City's mysterious maiden, was an indecent lady. Her reputation would be completely ruined. Mu Qilan was so angry that her eyes turned slightly red. This was completely lifting a rock to smash her own feet. Wasn't her motive for coming to the Earth domain because of the Overlord? If she didn't meet the Overlord, what was the point of her rushing over from so far away? But Yi Qing Luo seemed as though she couldn't see her raging emotions. She was still smiling like a flower as her long and narrow eyes curved up as her voice was faint with an obvious sense of teasing. Oh right, since Shadowless City's mysterious maiden is specially here for a Xian's appointment and not for the first auction of the treasure gathering, then I've already rejected you on behalf of a Xian. You can be mellow. The word, scram, was at the tip of her tongue when Yi Qing Luo thought for a moment and changed to a more elegant word, let's go. You. Mu Qilan clenched her fists as she maintained her mysterious maiden demeanor. Imperial Madam, how can you make a decision on behalf of the Overlord? Yi Qing Luo smiled. You said it yourself, Xian and I have a good relationship. Mu Qilan's fingers curled up as she opened her mouth wanting to say something. But Yi Qing Luo totally ignored her as she walked into the auction venue under the escort of a group of big shots. Mu Qilan was not resigned as she led a few ladies forward. The guards at the entrance immediately stopped them. When had Mu Qilan ever suffered such humiliation? This without embroiling city even rejected her entry into an auction venue? The few ladies beside her were feeling uneasy. They had not expected their backing to retreat in front of Imperial Madam. Now I can't even enter the auction hall? Now that something like this had happened and they had offended the Emperor's wife, how were they supposed to explain this to their family? At this time, some of the other young ladies looked at her mockingly. Women, you should be more respectful. Don't keep thinking about other people's husbands. After entering the auction house, Qiao family head then dispersed those big shots. They had more or less heard about what had happened outside the door. He could roughly guess the reason why Yiqing Luo disguised herself. Because of this, they didn't let those big shots disturb Yiqing Luo. After arriving at the private room that had already been booked, only then did the clamor die down a little. Lao Lai sat down. How did you provoke that group of people? And where is His Majesty? Not long ago, he saw the two of them loving each other and feeding each other sweetly. Why was it that Yiqing Luo was the only one left at the auction? Suddenly, he slapped his thigh and said, "Hey, Di Zun, don't tell me there's really something going on between you and that woman just now? Did you run away because you saw your old lover?" Yiqing Luo. She smiled slightly as she looked at Lao Lai. "Since you miss Ah Xian so much, I can send you to see him." That smile was hair-raising. Chapter 3964. But that mysterious maiden from Shadowless City shouldn't have the guts to use the name of the overlord to be so ostentatious. Pei Xing still found it strange. Yiqing Luo nodded. Indeed. How would anyone dare to use Dmo Xian's name to act cool? Especially knowing that Dmo Xian was in without embroiling city, she still acted cool. Even if it was mysterious maiden from Linglong Palace, she shouldn't have the guts. So, keeping an appointment with Dmo Xian might be true. Zhou Mo leaned aside as he raised his phoenix eyes in a frivolous manner. "TSK, the overlord actually wants to meet another lady in private. He obviously doesn't put you, the Empress, in his eyes." Saying that, he raised his hand and touched his chin. "But men are all like this. How can the wildflowers outside be as fragrant as the flowers at home?" Before he could finish his words, a pair of eyes filled with anger was fixed on him. Zhou Mo quivered as he saw Kitty Li staring at him with her big eyes full of anger. He hurriedly stood up and wrapped his arms around Kitty Li, laughing out loud. "Of course, a man like me is wholeheartedly devoted. I only have eyes for the kitty at home." Kitty Li was still struggling. Zhou Mo quickly looked at Yiqing Luo and said in a serious tone, "Little Qing Luo, you must not spoil a man's bad habit. Show me your empress dignity and teach the overlord a lesson." Kitty Li replied, Men. A pair of clowns were messing around." Yiqing Luo couldn't be bothered with Zhou Mo as she lowered her eyes slightly. In her heart, she naturally believed in Dmo Xian. She was just curious. Why would Mu Qilan be so sure that Dmo Xian had an appointment with her? Earlier, Dmo Xian should be handling some matters so he couldn't accompany her to the auction. She was sure of this. Dmo Xian had never mentioned who he was meeting at the auction. So, Mu Qilan specially came to the auction venue to meet Dmo Xian. What on earth was going on? Ah Luo. Pei Xing looked at the silent Yiqing Luo and called out carefully, "You. Do you think that mysterious maiden's words can be trusted?" Yiqing Luo shook her head. "Wait for Ah Xian to come back and ask him. You're the main character of this auction, so go and control the venue." Pei Xing and Xiao family patriarch exchanged a few more words and left the room. The big shots participating in the auction already knew that Yiqing Luo was staying in this room. The moment the door was opened, there was a lot of bustling chatter outside. And there were quite a number of people sticking their heads in. With just a few words, Qiao family's head sent everyone away. Family Qiao Yi family Tian, Chen maiden patriarch. Chen Mo Yi maiden from Lord Li. Yiqing Luo was afraid of such a situation, hence she put on a disguise on her outer appearance. Who would have thought that his identity would be exposed because of the mysterious lady of Shadowless City? Tian to had her had. Yiqing Luo might as well take off her veil and remove the makeup on her eyes and brows. Her countenance that could topple cities was peerlessly beautiful. Zhou Mo carried Kitty Li, whom he had finally coaxed, as he sat on the seat beside Yiqing Luo. "Don't you feel that Shadowless City's mysterious maiden, and that mysterious maiden who had died previously, are somewhat similar? Perhaps the mysterious maiden taught by Ling Long Palace is in this mode." Yiqing Luo replied calmly. "Old Lai also came over, even mysterious maiden from Shadowless City came over, looks like. Without embroiling, city's matter is quite big. Ling Long Palace's people also died in the auction." Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes. Chapter 3965. To nurture a mysterious fairy was a place that all the citizens in the Earth realm yearned for and respected. But Yiqing Luo was very curious. What was the significance of the existence of the three main cities' mysterious fairy? One was Qiao Yulu, and the current Mu Qilan. From them, the only common point was that they were the daughters of large families and their ages were extremely young. Moreover, they thought too highly of themselves. Yiqing Luo knocked on the table as she looked at Old Lai. "When was the Ling Long Palace formed? Like the main city's mysterious fairy, when did it start?" "This." Old Lai scratched the back of his head. "This kind of thing, it's impossible for us Hell Palace to know." His voice paused as he suddenly thought of something as he patted his head. "That's right, speaking of this, I remember. That is our Hell Palace's history, at least in my generation. Pushing back 2 generations. It seems that there was a senior who fought with the Ling Long Palace. Pushing back 2 generations? That was at least 200 to 300 years ago. The result of the fight was?" Yiqing Luo asked. "It's a draw." Old Lai shook his head uncertainly. "Now the Ling Long Palace and Hell Palace have nothing to do with each other. That battle should be a draw." Which meant that the appearance of the Ling Long Palace was 200 to 300 years ago. In these 200 to 300 years, they had a foothold in the Earth realm. And changed the living rules of the Earth realm. This wasn't something that could be achieved with just 1 or 2 points of ability. What was the motive of the Ling Long Palace? If the existence of mysterious fairy was to suppress each main city's city lord and maintain the balance of the Earth realm. From Qiao Yulu's actions, Yiqing Luo totally didn't feel any of the responsibilities and obligations that a mysterious maiden should have. On the contrary, she treated the citizens in her own city as her slaves. If she wanted the citizens to live, the citizens would live. If she wanted the citizens to die, the citizens had to die. This made Yiqing Luo started to suspect why the Ling Long Palace created the so-called mysterious fairy. Anyway, Yiqing Luo didn't have any good impression towards this so-called Ling Long Palace from the bottom of her heart. Yiqing Luo had a premonition. She would meet the Empyrean fairy of Shadowless City again. Pei Xing's first auction went very smoothly. After all, he had so many assists. Anyone with a brain wouldn't cause trouble at this time. Once there was trouble, that was to go with Pei Xing. Who was behind Pei Xing? The Imperial Madam Di Zun. And one of the 4 great Tian families of the Heaven Realm, the Huangfu family, as his backing. They couldn't wait to suck up to him, so how could they not comply with the rules? In particular, when Pei Xing took out the items that he had specially prepared and displayed them in the name of the Treasure's trading house, all the big shots were very enthusiastic in bidding. These items were auctioned under the name of the Treasure Gathering Exchange. Pei Xing had specially listened to Yiqing Luo's opinion. The Qiao family head would be responsible for donating all the crystals obtained from these auction items to the various remote areas in the land to support the citizens who were having a hard time. Using Yiqing Luo's words, it was a charity auction. Therefore, all the big shots had to show their wealth and kindness to leave a good impression in front of Pei Xing. The auction was in full swing. Very quickly, the 2 bottles of beauty cream which Yiqing Luo had specially given to Pei Xing were laid out. The popularity of the beauty cream had not subsided yet. Especially when he heard that there were only 2 bottles. One by one, the ladies were agitated as they madly bid. After all, it was her own thing. Yiqing Luo's interest was piqued. Chapter 3966. Coincidentally, she heard a familiar voice calling out, 500,000 crystal stones. That voice made Yiqing Luo's slender brows rose slightly as she looked towards the direction of the voice with interest. Through the crowd, there were a few figures seated at the private room near the corner on the first floor. Yiqing Luo's angle was coincidentally able to see that private room clearly. She also saw Mu Qiulan, who was pretending to be elegant as she sat there. Beside her were those few rich young ladies. Yiqing Luo's brows rose in interest. They actually managed to enter? Could it be that what she said earlier, wasn't it obvious enough? How big of a face did they have to be able to appear in the auction venue as though nothing had happened after being counterattacked by her? That face, wasn't it a little too thick? She thought. These few, distinguished, rich young ladies were the kind of people who cared about their face. What's so interesting about it? On seeing Yiqing Luo's teasing smile, Old Lai instantly perked up as he leaned over, following Yiqing Luo's gaze. He knew it. As long as he followed the imperial madam, there would definitely be something interesting to pass the time. Old Lai's interest was soaring, but when his gaze fell onto those few ladies, his brows instantly creased into a bundle. Why is it them again? Boring. He waved his hand as he put on a disinterested look. A bunch of young ladies, they can't even afford to fight. Yiqing Luo squinted at Old Lai as both her hands were propped on the exquisite carved railing. Her brows were languid as she spoke in an indifferent tone. Young ladies? Those people are all young ladies from prestigious families, and Shadowless City's mysterious maiden is their backing. Touching them is equivalent to touching the powerhouse behind them. Her brows rose as she gave a smile which didn't look like a smile. Otherwise, how do you think they managed to enter the auction venue? The people standing guard outside the auction house were only there to guard the door. If Mu Qiulan and those few young ladies forcefully entered the auction venue, plus they had the invitation card in their hands, as long as they could put down their face, naturally they would be able to sit there. The more Old Lai heard Yiqing Luo's words, the more excited he got. His two eyes lit up. Yiqing Luo sensed that something was amiss as her eyes retracted and looked towards Old Lai. Before she could even open her mouth, Old Lai leaped down from the railing. His agile figure instantly landed beside the private room where Mu Qiulan and the others were seated. Then, a slap landed on the floor. Pa! The ground cracked. The wooden table exploded. Falling from the sky, another burst of crackling profound light exploded. It immediately attracted everyone's attention. Even the auctioneer, who was standing on the auction stage and holding the beautifying cream, stopped talking. The guards heard the commotion and swarmed over. But, when they saw that the person descending from the sky was Old Lai, who was wearing a white robe and laughing wildly, they all looked at each other, dumbfounded. What was going on? Wasn't this the senior from the underworld palace who served the Lady Monarch? Why did he suddenly make a move? Should he stop them or not? Stop. Could they stop it? Wouldn't Madame D be angry? Not going to stop them? Wouldn't the auction be interrupted? What was going on? Was there an internal strife? The guards were dumbfounded. The group of people who took part in the auction were also dumbstruck. They hadn't figured out what was going on. Following that, all of them shot their gazes towards the second floor, towards Yiqing Luo's cabin. Yiqing Luo, who had both hands on the railing, welcomed various kinds of gazes from all directions. Chapter 3967. She just casually said it out. Then he got excited. Even if she wanted to create trouble, she still needed to choose the occasion. Didn't she know that this was Pei Xing's first auction? In this way, wouldn't the auction house be in a mess? Pei Xing's heart was going to be traumatized, all right? In the private seats, Mu Qiulan and the rest were all shocked. The two young misses who were seated in front were shocked by the sudden profound raise might as they spat out a mouthful of blood. What do you mean by this? Mu Qiulan stood up abruptly as her expression sunk as she stared at Old Lai viciously. Old Lai laughed mischievously, hasn't Madame D already said that since you're not here to participate in the auction, then don't appear here? You're an eyesore. Yi Qing Luo. When did she say this? She wanted to create trouble, why did she drag her into it? It made it seem as though she was the one who ordered Old Lai to create trouble. In other people's eyes. Wasn't it her who was overbearing and couldn't tolerate Mu Qilan? Alright, her reputation of being a jealous woman was going to be set in stone. Mu Qilan's expression turned cold. No matter what motive I have to participate in the auction, since I have the invitation card, then I'm a guest invited by treasure gathering and I have the right to participate in the auction. She said it word by word in an extremely serious and forceful manner. How can Madame D not even allow me to enter the auction just because the Overlord has a close relationship with me? Isn't this too much of a bully? Mu Qilan clenched her fists tightly as she raised her head up high, maintaining her mysterious maiden's dignity. She wanted to destroy Yi Qing Luo's reputation. A jealous woman, a narrow-minded woman, was not fit to stand beside the Overlord. A powerful existence like the Overlord. Even if there were a few ladies around him, wasn't that a very normal thing? Since ancient times, heroes were paired with beauties. On what basis did Yi Qing Luo not allow the Overlord to meet her? Mu Qilan's words were all ridiculing Yi Qing Luo for being a jealous woman. Old Lai gave a mischievous laugh. Oh? Invitation card? Where did you get the invitation card from? Let me take a look. Mu Qilan looked towards the young miss beside her. Show him the invitation card. The young miss was terrified as she cowered and took the invitation card. When Lao Lai reached out to receive the invitation. Ah, she screamed, threw the invitation card to Lao Lai, turned around, and ran behind Mu Qilan. It was as if he had been badly frightened. Lao Lai's appearance was indeed quite frightening. That face, coupled with his identity. How could an ordinary woman dare to approach him? Lao Lai flicked his sleeve and took the invitation card. It's so beautiful. Look carefully. Mu Qilan sneered. She walked into this auction fair and square, and this invitation card was personally sent out by the Treasures Gathering Trading House. But, Mu Qilan's haughty expression had yet to surface on her face. There was a hissing sound. Old Lai tore the invitation into pieces. Then, she tossed it into the sky, scattering flowers. Now, you don't have an invitation. Old Lai smiled. Mu Qilan. She was so angry that she was about to explode. The onlookers. Is there such a thing? As expected of the underworld palace. Angering people to death without paying for it. Yi Qing Luo, well, she was speechless about Lao Lai and didn't want to complain anymore. You're too much of a bully. The Treasures Gathering Trading House is so overbearing just because they have the support of the Overlord. Do they still have any rules? The arrogant young miss was so angry that she stood out. Her hand, which was broken by Yi Qing Luo, was still hurting. She had traveled thousands of miles from Shadowless City to Without Embroiling City. But she was treated in such a way. Chapter 3968. If they continued to endure, the other party might just stand on their heads and pee. Mu Qilan clenched her sleeves tightly as the face under the veil was also restraining the twisted arc. She raised her head and looked at the young lady standing on the second floor. Looking from this angle, the surroundings were ravaged by the luminous pearls. As though it had coated the young lady with a layer of velvet. The young lady who had already removed her veil and was facing the sky without any makeup. Under this light, her skin was sparkling and her beauty was clearly seen. Just a single glance. Even as a lady, she who was jealous couldn't stop her heart from skipping a beat. Mu Qilan's fingers suddenly tightened. The face under the veil suddenly turned pale. Madam Emperor, since the Overlord has personally acknowledged you, you shouldn't rely on the Overlord's trust in you to be so unbridled. Mu Qilan accused her word by word. Since I'm here at the auction, I'm a guest. But because of my relationship with the Overlord, you let this Hell Palace senior chase me out of the auction. How is this the demeanor of a matriarch? Her words paused slightly as her vision suddenly shifted onto Pei Sheng, who was standing next to the auctioneer. Or is this how the treasure exchange treats its guests? Basically everyone who came to the auction knew the significance of the treasure exchange to Pei Sheng. In order to complete the auction's wish, Pei Sheng specially delayed the date of going to the Heaven Realm with Old Master Huangfu. It was sufficient to show exactly how important this auction was to him. Mu Qilan's words. Not only did she criticize Yiqing Luo, she was also ridiculing the treasure exchange, merely a toy of Yiqing Luo. She was also hinting at Pei Sheng. He treated Yiqing Luo as his brother. Yiqing Luo knew clearly that it was such an important day, yet she still let Old Lai create trouble and mess up the auction. Pei Sheng, who was called out, frowned slightly as he walked over. Before he came over, Old Lai had already made way for him, without a single bit of remorse for disrupting the meticulously prepared auction. Instead he grinned as he said, "Lad, don't be so courteous. I know you want to thank me for helping you chase these troublemakers out. What's our relationship? No need to be so courteous." Pei Sheng. The spectating bigwigs. Does your face hurt when you say this? Even Mu Qilan and the others choked upon hearing this. His skin was probably thicker than theirs, right? Yiqing Luo also wanted to express that she really didn't know this person, damn it. If Lao Lai walked out now, it meant that she wanted him to. He was being stupid here. Did she still want her face? Unable to tolerate it any longer, Yiqing Luo flipped over and leapt down from the railing, grabbing onto Old Lai's robe. "Shut up." Old Lai turned his head to look at Yiqing Luo, and that terrifying face was smiling like a flower. "Imperial Madam, I'm enough. Just these few young ladies who don't have any battle power, I can settle them alone. Just wait there for the forces behind them to come knocking on your door, then make your move." Yiqing Luo, she wanted to seal Old Lai's mouth. They might as well poison him and make him mute. Hearing this, Mu Qilan's expression darkened. "Imperial Madam, don't tell me you want to declare war on Linglong Palace because of my relationship with His Majesty?" Her words instantly made the surrounding bigwigs drew in a breath of cold air. Declare war on Linglong Palace? Linglong Palace was the symbol of the Earth domain. If Yiqing Luo declared war on Linglong Palace, which was to become enemies with the entire Earth domain. Chapter 3969. Let's declare war then. Who have I, Old Lai, been afraid of? Old Lai puffed out his chest as he patted it disapprovingly. Mu Qilan's expression sunk even deeper as her eyes were covered with a layer of malevolence. The surrounding big shots all frowned. If they were to really fight, who should they help? Everyone's vision fell onto Yiqing Luo. Luckily, Yiqing Luo's rationality was still present. She didn't bother about Old Lai's words. She even grabbed Old Lai's robe and flung it behind him. "You shut up." Old Lai, who was so arrogant that he had no brains, shrunk his neck and shut his mouth after Yiqing Luo's explosive roar. Seeing Yiqing Luo's actions, Mu Qilan felt that Yiqing Luo was afraid of her words. She finally felt a little better in her heart. A sliver of delight surfaced between her brows, just as she was about to open her mouth. But Yiqing Luo snatched it first. "Shadowless City's mysterious maiden, who do you think you are to be worth my effort?" Her tone was filled with a smile as her eyes were filled with ridicule. "You." Mu Qilan's expression sunk. Yiqing Luo's sentence was totally a slap on her face. And it was the kind of slap that was so loud. Especially Yiqing Luo's gaze, when she looked at her, it was as though she was looking at a retard. This made Mu Qilan's heart unable to calm down. Yiqing Luo appeared extremely lazy, and when she looked at Mu Qilan, she even yawned as she put on a bored look. "Just a clown, I don't have the leisure to waste my time on you." Mu Qilan's expression turned gloomy. Saying that, she turned around lazily and raised her hand as she waved at Pei Sheng. "Continue with your auction." Pei Sheng, could this kind of situation really continue? Everyone's attention was focused on her and Mu Qilan. How was he going to continue? Even if he wanted to continue. Yiqing Luo's words had agitated him quite a bit. No matter how one looked at it, Mu Qilan wouldn't take it lying down, right? As expected. At the next instance, Mu Qilan couldn't take it anymore as she moved and blocked in front of Yiqing Luo. From the first time she met Yiqing Luo, she had always been in a state of tolerance. Keep enduring, keep enduring. She was the dignified mysterious maiden of Shadowless City. On what basis could she tolerate Yiqing Luo? Just because Yiqing Luo was the imperial madam? Heh. The title of the emperor's wife would probably fall on her head when she met the overlord. Why was he so arrogant? Mu Qilan's belly full of resentment and indignation erupted in an instant. Her expression was ugly, and her eyes were vicious. Even the veil could not hide the twisted expression on her face. Imperial madam, you make it sound so nice, but in reality, she sneered and ridiculed. If it weren't for your order, would the seniors of the underworld palace come to cause trouble for me during the auction? At the end of the day, you're just bothered by my relationship with Di Zun. Yiqing Luo lifted her eyelids slightly. After seeing Mu Qilan's face that was twisted with hatred, she smiled. Her pink lips curled into a mocking smile. The mysterious fairy of Shadowless City is so thick-skinned that I can't even catch up to her. The young girl's mocking smile almost made Mu Qilan lose control of her emotions. Yiqing Luo's slender fingers lifted up slightly, brushing past her chin as she gave an evil smile. What's the relationship between Xian and you? You keep on talking about your relationship with Xian, your relationship with Xian. Then, please tell me, what's the relationship between the two of you? Word by word, she spat it out from her pink lips. Her voice was obviously very light. Her tone was obviously very calm. But, when the words entered her ears. Chapter 3970. Somehow she felt that when Yiqing Luo asked this question, it was filled with sarcasm. As though she was ridiculing her wishful thinking. Furthermore, how was she supposed to answer this question? Right from the start, Mu Qilan had intentionally mentioned her relationship with the overlord. It was to let the surrounding bigwigs know. Not only Yiqing Luo had the overlord as her backing. Her relationship with the overlord wasn't shallow. But when Yiqing Luo directly asked this question, she didn't know how to answer again. After all, the young lady standing in front of her was the overlord's wife who had personally acknowledged. Which was equivalent to the empress. If she directly said that she had an ambiguous relationship with the overlord in front of Yiqing Luo, then it would be confirmed that she was a lady who seduced someone else's husband. Mu Qilan pursed her red lips as she deliberated for some time before replying. I had once sat at the same table with the overlord while drinking wine and chatting. What relationship do you think I have with the overlord? Saying that, she laughed lightly as her tone was filled with complacency. Drinking wine and chatting? Yiqing Luo laughed out in ridicule. My Xian is really popular. Just sitting at the same table and he's able to make others remember him till now. She laughed softly as her long and narrow eyes rose. To tell the truth, if you didn't say it, I really didn't know. So you and Xian just sat at the same table. The surrounding people couldn't help but laughed out loud. Mu Qilan still hadn't understood why these people laughed along. The surrounding bigwigs looked at Mu Qilan as though they were looking at a retard. Some of them even had some sympathy in their eyes. This Shadowless City's mysterious young lady was obviously intentionally making others misunderstand that she had a relationship with the overlord. In the end, there wasn't much of a relationship between them. The bigwigs present had never sat down at the same table and chatted about anything under the sun. However, at the very least, they had chatted in the same hall during the Qiao family's banquet. If they could use the overlord's reputation in this way to show that they had a close relationship with the overlord. They all had a close relationship with the overlord, all right? Before they acted cool, they didn't even find out clearly. Mu Qilan, who was ridiculed for no reason, felt a little embarrassed. She bit her lower lip hard, and her fingers under her sleeves turned pale. You don't believe me, right? Then, Imperial Madam, please take a look at this. Mu Qilan's eyes flashed with coldness as she fished out a jade pendant from her pocket. The jade pendant was sparkling and translucent. It was a transparent white. A purple light could be faintly seen floating in the air. The jade pendant wasn't big. It was about the size of half a palm. When Mu Qilan raised the jade pendant up towards Yiqing Luo's eyes, the people in front could also clearly see the obvious word carved on the jade pendant, Emperor. When Yiqing Luo saw that piece of jade pendant, his pupils constricted unconsciously. She furrowed her brows. What do you mean? I'm sure the imperial madam knows whose jade pendant this is. After Mu Qilan took out the jade pendant, she was filled with confidence. There was even a hint of pride in her voice. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips slightly. The handwriting carved on the jade pendant was indeed Dmo Xian's handwriting. In addition, the material of the jade pendant could not be faked. Especially, that jade pendant indeed had Dmo Xian's presence. This jade pendant. It should be Dmo Xian's jade pendant. Seeing that Yiqing Luo didn't reply, she was apparently stunned by the jade pendant that she took out. Chapter 3971. The Overlord's Jade Pendant. The big shots who were watching all gasped. As for the jade pendant, it was not a problem for it to be used as an ornament. However, if it was in the hands of a woman, the significance would be completely different. After all, the jade pendant was something that was hung on one's body and carried around with one's aura. Many people like to use their jade pendants, with the opposite sex as a token of love. Furthermore, even if it wasn't a token of love, the fact that the other party was willing to give him the jade pendant meant that the two of them were on good terms. Mu Qilan actually had Lord Overlord's jade pendant in her hands. All of a sudden, the attitude of the crowd, who originally felt ashamed of Mu Qilan's stubbornness towards Lord Dizun, also changed. There were quite a number of ladies whose gazes towards Yiqing Luo were filled with pity. Sai, the mysterious maiden of Shadowless City, had the Overlord's jade pendant. This meant that the relationship between the mysterious maiden of Shadowless City and the Overlord was indeed very good. Madame D trusted Dizun so much. But, with the evidence before their eyes, they had no choice but to believe it. The surrounding people's attitude changed, and those pitiful gazes towards Yiqing Luo made Mu Qilan feel extremely carefree. His ferocious expression was replaced by a smile. There was a smug smile in his eyes. Mu Qilan put away the jade pendant as if it was a precious treasure. She held it in her palm and said, "Imperial Madam, I know you're feeling very sad, but this is the truth." Yiqing Luo's slender brows rose slightly as her charming eyes stared straight at the jade pendant in her palm. He didn't say anything. Old Lai couldn't hold it in any longer as he took a look at the complacent Mu Qilan and leaned close to Yiqing Luo as he lowered his voice. "Imperial Madam, that jade pendant really belongs to the Overlord, right?" Yiqing Luo glanced at him coldly. Lao Lai shivered and said righteously, "Do you have anything from His Majesty? At least something more advanced than that jade pendant. Take it out and smash her to death." Yiqing Luo's gaze turned even colder. It was so cold that Lao Lai retracted his neck bit by bit and covered his mouth with his hand. But Old Lai's words were still heard by many people. All of them were staring at Yiqing Luo. I wanted to see what she had to offer. Something better. But, under everyone's gaze, Yiqing Luo merely raised her gaze indifferently, as it fell onto Mu Qilan, as she spoke in an indifferent tone, "Seeing that Shadowless City's mysterious maiden doesn't have any self-respect, and is so shameless in trying to prove her relationship with Ah Xian, I'll pity you." She naturally wouldn't use anything more valuable than a jade pendant to compete with Mu Qilan. That jade pendant indeed belonged to Dmo Xian. But who could ascertain that the jade pendant was personally given to Mu Qilan by Dmo Xian? She took out all kinds of things in front of everyone, insisting on competing with Mu Qilan. This wasn't just lowering his own status. It would also elevate Mu Qilan's status. Since Mu Qilan wanted to be a clown, then, let Dmo Xian personally slap their faces. Anyway, she believed in her Ah Xian. "Are you going to let her meet His Majesty?" Old Lai said in a low voice. You really don't want to kill her with something more precious? It's not like you to admit defeat like this. This old fellow still hasn't given up on stirring up trouble. Chapter 3972. These words instantly caused the complacent smile on Mu Qilan's face to freeze. The hand holding the jade pendant unconsciously tightened. Yiqing Luo didn't even bother to take a look at her as she turned around to return to her own cabin. Suddenly, she seemed to have thought of something, and her footsteps stopped. Then, he turned around and looked at Mu Qilan with a smile. That smile was bright and beautiful, extremely alluring. However, Mu Qilan only felt that the smile was like an ice-cold venomous snake coiling around her. It was that brief moment of distraction. Mu Qilan felt a dull pain in her wrist. Before he could react, a gust of wind blew past. Mu Qilan staggered a few steps back. When the hurricane dissipated, she covered her throbbing arm. However, he realized that the jade pendant in his hand had disappeared. Her expression changed drastically as she abruptly raised her head and stared at Yiqing Luo. Indeed, in Yiqing Luo's hand, he saw that piece of jade pendant. Yiqing Luo hooked the jade pendant and shook it a few times. The jade pendant glowed with a purple light. He could tell that it was a good item. Bitch! Return the jade pendant to me. Mu Qilan's expression changed drastically as she roared in fury. She stared at the jade pendant. It was hard to imagine that everything had happened in just an instant. Yiqing Luo snatched the jade pendant from her hand. This. How did he do it? That jade pendant must not fall into Yiqing Luo's hands. Otherwise, when Mu Qilan thought of the consequences, her face turned deathly pale. She tried hard to maintain the demeanor of an Empyrean fairy, but at this moment, she could no longer maintain it. With a leap, he landed in front of Yiqing Luo. He raised his hand to snatch the jade pendant. Only, when her hand stretched out in front of Yiqing Luo. But he was frightened by Yiqing Luo's gaze as he froze on the spot. That gaze was like that of a ruthless and bloodthirsty beast. It was as if she would be completely devoured in an instant. Mu Qilan's heart shuddered violently. However, when she fixed her eyes on him again. However, he only met the girl's mocking eyes. Those smiling eyes. It overlapped with the bloodlust from before. Mu Qilan felt a chill run down her spine, as if she was in an ice house. Immediately following that, Yiqing Luo slowly raised her hand. He did not even touch Mu Qilan with a single finger. Mu Qilan felt an invisible resistance on her chest, which pushed her away and slammed heavily into the private room. The wooden tables and chairs were all smashed to pieces. Yiqing Luo's expression was indifferent as her emotions didn't fluctuate much as she looked at Mu Qilan, as her long and narrow eyes squinted slightly. Then, she slowly said, "This jade pendant belongs to Ah Xian. I've already said that I'm a very stingy person. I'm so stingy that I can't tolerate other women carrying my man's belongings. So, I'll keep this jade pendant for the time being." She tossed the jade pendant into the air. The netherworld phoenix ring in his hand flashed, and he kept it. Mu Qilan watched helplessly as the jade pendant disappeared right before her eyes. She was so anxious that her eyes turned red. B*TCH. That jade pendant is mine. Yiqing Luo smiled. Isn't it said that you and Ah Xian are on good terms? I've allowed you to meet Ah Xian now. You want the jade pendant? Let Ah Xian ask me personally. Saying that, she didn't even turn her head back as she directly leapt up and returned to the private room on the second floor. That posture was so cool that the surrounding big shots hadn't even caught up to her rhythm. Mu Qilan was so infuriated that her eyes turned red as tears filled her eyes. She gritted her teeth and was about to rush up to snatch the jade pendant forcefully. But the few young ladies beside her immediately pounced forward to stop her. Chapter 3973. The other few young ladies nodded their heads vigorously. Madam Profound Maiden, bear with it for a while. When the overlord appears, we will complain to him. A jealous woman like her, the overlord will definitely be disgusted. As long as the overlord is here, we will be able to complain about Yi Qing Luo's arrogance. The young ladies were actually more afraid of. Once they started to fight, the ones who would suffer would be them. They were totally bound to Mu Qilan now. If Mu Qilan took action, they would definitely take action. But the current situation, it was extremely disadvantageous to them. One look at the arrogant young ladies and they knew that her hand bones were broken. They didn't want to get hurt. Hearing the young lady's words, Mu Qilan's face turned even paler. Her gaze towards Yi Qing Luo's cabin was filled with hatred. But, no matter how much dissatisfaction she had no choice but to admit that what these young ladies said was indeed reasonable. If she took action, she would absolutely not gain any advantage and would even suffer a loss. Now, they could only wait for the overlord. But, that jade pendant. Mu Qilan was feeling anxious and frustrated. But under the tugs of the young ladies, she still left the auction venue. Seeing that they had already left, Pei Sheng and Xiao family's patriarch immediately stirred up the atmosphere, bringing the tempo of the auction. Although everyone was very interested in the interlude just now, they didn't know what to do. After all, it was related to the overlord's gossip. But, after the auction items were displayed one by one, everyone's attention was still attracted by the auction items. Although there was a little accident in the first round of auction, but it still ended satisfactorily. It continued all the way till the evening, which was around 7 or 8 in the evening when the auction ended. The big shots were looking for an opportunity to set up a banquet to invite Yi Qing Luo, to pull their relationship closer. But when they reached the cabin's entrance, they discovered that there was no one inside. Even Pei Sheng and Xiao family's patriarch didn't know when Yi Qing Luo and the rest had left. After searching one round around the auction venue, they indeed didn't discover any traces of Yi Qing Luo and the rest, so they left resentfully. By now, Yi Qing Luo had already returned to the Qiao residence. She sat by the seat, holding that piece of jade pendant which she snatched from Mu Qilan, swaying it in her hand. The candlelight swayed, making the purple light on the jade pendant shine even more treacherous. Yi Qing Luo's fingertip touched that stream of light. This was indeed Dmo Xian's remnant aura. It wasn't fake. Yi Qing Luo poked the jade pendant a few times. The purple flowing light kept darting around. At this moment, a familiar and warm scent of sandalwood entered his nostrils. Shortly after, her delicate body was pulled into a broad embrace. This sudden embrace brought with it a trace of coldness. But very quickly, he was warmed by the temperature of the two of them. Ah Xian. Yi Qing Luo's eyes lit up as she turned around and met the man's gentle gaze. She wrapped her arms around the man's neck. So early? The last time I left for a day and a night, I was scolded by you. Naturally, I wouldn't dare to do it again. Dmo Xian wrapped his arms around the young lady's slender waist and rested his head on her shoulder. He fiercely inhaled the fragrance coming from the girl's body. Yi Qing Luo snorted, "At least you're obedient. What are you looking at, so lost in thought that you didn't even notice my return?" Dmo Xian had just pushed the door open and saw the young lady sitting there, poking at something. Chapter 3974. Token of Love? Dmo Xian caught the jade pendant and didn't look at it. Instead, he lowered his head and bit the young lady's nose. "Having you as a lover is enough for me, how would I dare to have other lovers?" "Don't dare or don't want to." Yi Qing Luo pushed him as she snorted. Dmo Xian hugged her tightly, his voice was gentle and pampering. "Don't want and don't dare." Humph! Yi Qing Luo raised her chin, looking like a noble queen as she glanced at the jade pendant in Dmo Xian's hand. "Seeing that you are so obedient, I will give you a chance to explain." Dmo Xian's line of sight fell on Yi Qing Luo. His deep eyes gazed deeply at the young lady's face. His eyes were filled with pampering and tenderness. Yiqing Luo, who was being stared at, unnaturally turned her head and was about to push the man to explain. But her face was covered by a ball of warmth. The man's domineering kiss fell on her lips. The breath was boiling hot, as if it was going to swallow her up. The arms that encircled her delicate body were constantly increasing the strength. Like he wanted to rub her into his body. The sudden passion made Yiqing Luo unable to control herself as her whole body softened in Dmo Xian's arms. Until she was out of breath. The man then let go of her. Yiqing Luo lay on his chest, her face flushed red. After gasping for breath for a while, she raised her fist and hammered his chest. She raised her head and glared at him. I'm talking to you about serious matters. Are you feeling guilty? Are you trying to divert my attention by doing this? The young lady's face was flushed red and her eyes were filled with seduction. This stare had no fierce expression at all. Instead it seemed unique. Dmo Xian's eyes deepened by a few notches. He hugged the young lady tightly, his chin rested on the young lady's slender shoulder and half of his face was buried under the young lady's fine black hair. The erect nose and soft thin lips brushed past the young lady's skin from time to time. Warm breath sprayed down. Yiqing Luo's legs softened a little. It's your fault. The man's husky voice came into her ears. That slightly hoarse voice was very magnetic. Teasing Yiqing Luo's heartstrings. Yiqing Luo couldn't help but struggle and push the man's head away. What do you mean by blame me? You are tempting me. Dmo Xian's head was in the young lady's palm and his arms were still tightly wrapped around her. I obviously know that my self-control, in front of you, can't even withstand one blow. How did I seduce you? She was obviously questioning him about his little lover. They were obviously aggressive. How did it become a temptation? Was he blaming her for being too beautiful? Dmo Xian's eyes sunk slightly, like the starry sky, as he looked deeply into Yiqing Luo's eyes. I miss you, your expression, makes me want to. He dragged out the ending syllable and suppressed his voice, as he whispered into Yiqing Luo's ears, eat you. Yiqing Luo, she had forgotten that Dmo Xian was a beast. There was no justification for beasts. Yiqing Luo stared at him and pushed away the man's deliberately tempting head, avoiding the man's faintly discernible warm breath. Do you want the chance to explain or not? Dmo Xian nibbled on the slender little hand that was pushing him, as he raised his eyes slightly and gazed at Yiqing Luo. That pair of shimmering peach blossom eyes was like a pool of spring water, flowing into Yiqing Luo's heart. That scene was simply mesmerizing. Yiqing Luo's face, in a flash, turned red. As if it was on fire. Chapter 3975. Evildoer. An absolute evildoer. However, the evildoer who had seduced her would retract his demonic attitude after he had seduced her. Putting on a serious expression, he picked up the forgotten jade pendant and placed it in front of him. With just a glance, he threw the jade pendant on the table beside him. This is my jade pendant, what's wrong? Do you know where it came from? Yiqing Luo poked the jade pendant and raised her brows. Dmo Xian, Yiqing Luo hooked the jade pendant again and threw it into Dmo Xian's arms. Shadowless City's mysterious maiden claimed to have a close relationship with you. This is the jade pendant you personally gave her. Shadowless City's mysterious maiden? Dmo Xian frowned slightly. Who? Yiqing Luo shrugged. How would I know? Dmo Xian carefully scrutinized the jade pendant, only feeling that it was somewhat familiar, but for a moment he couldn't recall when he had worn this jade pendant, not to mention who he had given this jade pendant to. Most importantly, did he look like someone who would give a jade pendant to others? She came all the way from Shadowless City to Without Embroiling City, holding a jade pendant, wanting to acknowledge you as her kin. Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a teasing smile. Her words were full of sarcasm. Don't know, no impression. Dmo Xian threw the jade pendant again and stretched out his arms to hug Yiqing Luo. Jealous? There are so many women who admire you. If I were to be jealous of every one of them, would I be able to handle it? Yiqing Luo rolled her eyes and leaned into his arms. Dmo Xian lifted a strand of her hair and laughed lowly. You have provoked quite a number of men, haven't I been busy too? Yiqing Luo. It means that I have not provoked as many women as you have provoked. Dmo Xian narrowed his eyes slightly, a dangerous glint flashed across his eyes. So, you want to provoke more and make me too busy? Yiqing Luo's little body shuddered. After meeting the man's gaze, she instantly became obedient. After being obedient, she felt that something was wrong. Wasn't she the one questioning Dmo Xian now? Why was she suppressed by him instead? Was she going to rebel? Did she still want to stand up for her wife? Yiqing Luo immediately put on a straight face as she stretched out her hand to push him. Now I'm the one questioning you. What relationship do you have with that Shadowless City's mysterious maiden? Don't change the topic. Aren't you not jealous? Dmo Xian pinched her little face. Yiqing Luo raised her head up high with a "I'm very angry, don't touch me" expression. Jealousy is one thing, your jade pendant is in the hands of another woman, that's another matter. The smile in Dmo Xian's eyes deepened as his long and narrow peach blossom eyes hooked into a wavy arc, like a poppy blossoming. Isn't that simple? Let her explain personally how she got my jade pendant, wouldn't that be enough? Yiqing Luo's brows rose. Shadowless City's mysterious maiden kept on saying that she has a close relationship with you, so close that you even sat at the same table, discussing about poetry and life philosophy. I don't even know who the person is. How intimate do you think we can be? Dmo Xian loved this young lady who was obviously jealous but still pretended not to care. Yiqing Luo clicked her tongue. If Mu Qilan heard this sentence, her heart would probably be pierced to death. But she had to admit. This sentence made her feel great. But the pleasure wasn't over yet. The man suddenly lowered his voice as he leaned close to her ear. His low and hoarse voice was magnetic and alluring. It was like a little hook, gently teasing her heart. Furthermore, I only want to talk to you, from poetry and life philosophy, to. He paused slightly as his voice became deeper, on the bed. Yiqing Luo. Chapter 3976. I'm serious. Yiqing Luo tugged his wrist. Since you don't have any impression of her, then how did she get this jade pendant? Even if ordinary people wanted to steal your things, they wouldn't be able to do so, right? Dmo Xian held her body tightly and carried her all the way to the bed in the inner room. Then he sat on the bed and circled her from behind. This jade pendant looks familiar, but I haven't seen it for a long time. Yiqing Luo's long and narrow eyes narrowed. Are you sure it's not a gift from you? After that, she raised her brows and looked up at him. Her slender fingers poked the man's chest. Did you give too many things to girls, so you don't remember them clearly? Other than giving you a token of love. I have never given anything to anyone else. Dmo Xian rested his head on her shoulder as his low and hoarse voice rang beside her ear, very alluring. Yiqing Luo snorted. But the next moment, her body felt light. Her body was changed in another direction. Facing Dmo Xian. In her pupils, Dmo Xian's peerless and elegant countenance was reflected in her eyes. Her chin was clasped by the man's slender fingers. A head of black hair fell on Yiqing Luo's face. He leaned over and leaned towards Yiqing Luo. The distance between the two was so close that as long as they moved, their lips would touch. Dmo Xian then stopped his approach. The man's elegant sandalwood scent lingered in between her nostrils. Yiqing Luo's chin was clasped by him, but she was unable to shift her gaze away. Just like that, when their eyes met. The man's thin lips curled up, the pampering and gentleness in his eyes seemed to be able to drown one in it. Still not admitting that you're jealous? Yiqing Luo wanted to shake her head, but her chin was clasped by him, so she could only blink her eyes. No, before the word yes could leave her mouth, it was sealed by the man's thin lips. Just a little bit. He then left. I'll give you one more chance to answer. Yiqing Luo's eyes widened. If she didn't admit that she was jealous, Was he planning to keep kissing her until she admitted it? Taking advantage of her, made it so open and aboveboard. There was no one else. Dmo Xian seemed as though he didn't notice the emotions in Yiqing Luo's eyes, as he didn't have any intention to let go of her. His eyes were still staring straight at her pink lips. He seemed to be waiting for her to admit that she was jealous. Forced by the man's tyrannical power, she gritted her teeth and glared at Dmo Xian as she said word by word, "Yes, I'm jealous." This time, his manly heart was satisfied, right? However, as soon as she finished speaking, his body suddenly fell backwards. Her back was pressed against the soft bed. Dmo Xian's thin lips curled up slightly as he gave a devilish smile, in order to make it up to Lil Luo, and to make Lil Luo, assured, so. I use my actions to prove that my heart, my body, all belong to you. Yiqing Luo, holy shit. In the end, his ultimate goal was to transform into a beast. The next day, the first thing Yiqing Luo did when she woke up was to kick the man off the bed. It was only after the kick that he realized what was going on. This was the first time she and Dmo Xian were sleeping on the same bed ever since they arrived at the Earth realm, and he was still by her side when she woke up. Dmo Xian, who was kicked onto the ground, was lying lazily on the ground. His underwear hung loosely, revealing his fair and muscular chest. A head of black hair spread out behind him. Early in the morning, that peerless face of his didn't have the usual stern look. On the contrary, it was extremely lazy. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.